Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Bull. Another great episode. It seems interesting because they've been following this trend lately of doing more and more cases that are particular about Bull. Obviously, because this is the third episode in a row that has to do with Bull specifically. Obviously, this and last week's episode dealt with his past a little bit more, his own personal life. And then the one before that was like, oh yeah, this is about, because it was a personal attack on Bull himself. But nevertheless, in this particular case, it deals specifically with an ex of Bull's named Allison. Essentially, her son is a lawyer and he's trying to represent her in a Toxic City tour case. Basically, it's a situation where someone is sick. A whole bunch of people get sick from one thing, and it's basically kind of I think this is considered like a civil case of them trying to get something from the case. In this case, it's money, because it's like they need the money to pay off like medical bills, as well as just like getting a company, in this case, this furniture manufacturing company called Warwick, to basically fix the pipelines to make it so like people don't get sick like they have, because they've gotten all sorts of like cancers from this. Like, for example, Allison, for example, has kidney cancer, which super sucks. So basically, together, Bull takes on this case. Originally, he was just like, okay, why would I take interest in this case? But it turns out because the son of one of Bull's exes. Initially, I was like, are we trying to twist this storyline to make it like, oh yeah, like he's actually like Bull's son, and Bull just never knew. But it's like, no, like his dad like died like when he was 12 years old, so basically half of his life he was spent without his dad, just because of accident. It was a blizzard and everything. But I guess ultimately that's why Marissa probably took the case, because she knew how important this was. Because, maybe it's just because she knows Bull well enough to be like, oh, that was such an important person in his life. Because even he was like, yo, we were like a team, It's just like, oh, Allison and Jason. It's just like, oh yeah, like, but then they kind of broke up around college. It's something that Bull kind of brings up later on in the episode. And it's something he had it combines with what he brought up earlier in the episode. Like, kind of the monologue at the beginning. It's like, at different points in your life, you are a different person. You want different things. You strive for different things. Different things are important to you. And at that point in time, he felt like college is what he needed to do, whereas Allison is what he had to do. So it was more like it was almost like a want versus a need type of situation. And that's just who he was at that time. And it's like what he really wanted was to sweep her off her feet and just like, hey, run away with me. But being who he is now, maybe he would make that decision. Like, if he was who he is now, hindsight being 2020, he'd make that decision in a heartbeat. But it's just who he was at the time. It's just the whole aspect of like, you're a very different person in different stages of your life, essentially. It's just what that whole point was supposed to be. So what was interesting about this case on many different levels was the first aspect of like them being happy that Bull and the Zach ended up choosing the final juror, and that being the lady who'd kind of already gone through divorce. So she was kind of like almost in like a give the middle finger to the man type of thing of like, men are manipulative and lie. Kind of like, oh, don't believe the big giant. They're just people at the top who are just going to lie and cheat on you. So it's like her particular situation from a psychological standpoint would just kind of be like, okay, like we can use this to our advantage. But the other side was happy about it too, which starts bringing up some questions. Why are they happy? Then it's like, okay, we got to figure out, maybe they found out something about the people on our side that ended up being something they could use against us. In that particular case, Bull start throwing out, well, what if it's Allison? Because the fact of the matter is, a theory was like, well, because her grandfather died of lung cancer, but she never mentioned it. It's like, well, maybe they could use that to poke a hole in, like, oh, the fact of the matter is, how can you say that you got sick this way, even though it's kidney cancer and that was lung cancer? How can you say that this isn't some like family disease that you don't also know about or something like that? They poke holes and kind of tear her apart. And Bull not wanting her to be in that situation, because obviously Bull very much cares for her still, because initially he was just all about like, hey, because Allison was like, this whole situation is bleeding her dry. She's already having to put up her house for money. So it's like, for her, it was just like, let's find some settlement that can make this okay. But the moment he saw her bleeding from her nose and kind of getting weak, that other side of him, obviously, that cares about her, kicked in. So I love that line of like, okay, so I'm going to stay in that room that you gave me, but while I'm asleep, don't try and come in there and try and do some funny stuff, because, okay, I'm not that type of boy. It's just so interesting seeing, like, you can see that little bit of that kindling romance, like still lighting up after all these years. So initially, Bull didn't want her to speak at the hearing. I mean, at the trial. Which is so sad because Zach himself had said, like, his mom didn't care about the money or anything. What mattered the most to her is being able to say what she needed to say. Because above all else, that's what mattered the most to her. And not being able to take that chance, having that chance taken away from her, possibly, that just kind of hit her the hardest, especially considering she might not have that long to live. So, but what was a real kick in the teeth is when you find out that one of the people that, you know, is kind of brought up in this, as well, his name is, Brian, I think, initially, the way the defense was like attacking him, I was like, oh man, oh, your doctor, he's only been your doctor for 22 months. I was like, oh, could he have faked it? I was like, oh man, so the doctor's the one that faked it. Maybe he, you know, he thought he can get a little kickback from the whole situation. That's initially what I was thinking. I was like, no, you idiot. Brian lied. I'm like, wow. Because even Bull basically says it. He doesn't outright say it, but it's basically like, you piece of shit is what you are, like, taking advantage of a situation because him being the terrible human being he is, trying to monopolize on a bad situation for other people, trying to get a little payday of his own. It hinders their case. Like, it's like, you know, because I guess in his mind he's thinking like, well, you know, other people are affected by this. You know, I know people who are affected. So, you know, maybe in his mind it's like, well, that's the same thing as me being affected. But it's just like, that's such a scummy thing to do because he almost ruined their entire case because of that action. You know, it's like you undermined everyone else's serious situation by doing that. It's a dick move. So, but ultimately Bull made the decision to go, hey, when it's all said and done, I want you to speak your truth. And she did. And it took me by surprise what she said. Like, I was expecting her to be very blunt, like hard on them, blah, blah, I hate Warwick. But it's like, no, I'm grateful for them because this whole town they live in is basically thanks because of Warwick. Because a lot of the people in the town, you know, family and friends of friends and family of friends and friends of family, you know, neighbors and everyone alike are connected to this. Like, it's kind of like a big part of the town, like a big part of industry for this town. And so because of it, you know, she has her family here. Her and her husband spent time here. They raised their son here. So ultimately, she can't hate them. It's like, even what happened to her husband, it was an accident, you know? So even her situation, she's like, they didn't intentionally poison people. Yes, there was some iffy data about the flame retardant that was, you know, possibly making people sick. That was kind of its own thing because it was mainly used on tested on rats. But nevertheless, yes, there was some wonky stuff. But the moment they found out, oh, this is poisoning people, they pulled out. But her biggest issue with the whole situation was, rather than being like, hey, what can we do to help remedy this situation? The first words out their mouth was, prove that we made you sick. They were so focused on that aspect rather than, it's like, these are the people who are family and friends who work at this company. They're a part of this town, this community. And for them to do that, rather than not being like doing the neighborly thing of like, hey, let me help you do all I can. That's what really hit her the most. And it's just like, even at the end of the day, she doesn't hate him. Like, some days she hates Warwick a little bit, you know, just from bitterness, you know, she says, of like everything that just happened, which rightfully so. I mean, I wouldn't even call it being bitter. I'd call it being rightfully hateful at the people who basically made you sick, who have the audacity to be like, well, prove it, you know, because the whole case came down to the fact is they can't prove it that it didn't make you sick, but it's not like you can prove directly that it did make them sick. But her speech, it hit all the moments. And I love that the judge was like, he's like, objection. And she's like, you sit down and shut your mouth. I love that. I was like, ooh, like, she's like, let her speak. Let her say what she needs to say. So luckily, everything worked out. Because I love this all kind of goes back to what Bull said when he met with them. It's like, the fact of the matter is, you guys are lawyers meant to stay out of the court. Me, the courtroom's my home. I'm like, Bull was like, I will rip you apart. Like, I'm the king of the castle in the courtroom, so don't test me. You know, so I love that element, and it kind of comes back because Bull, I mean, even love that line of like, no, don't worry, you don't have to stand up for us, because if she was on the other foot, I wouldn't stand up for you either. So but ultimately Bull was asking only for like 10 times, well, not only, but 10 times what they were initially offering. And then immediately, like at the end, they were like, okay, we'll give you 20% plus fix the pipelines, and then also like pay for Allison to get her house back. So, I mean, just like I said, it was a beautifully, conclusion to the whole situation. showing you just how much of a good lawyer Zach is too, even though this was like his first time in court. But he's very smart kid. That's why I was kind of thinking like the way he was talking and stuff. I was like, man, they're really pushing, almost making it look like he's Bull's kid. Obviously, like there's still that part of my brain, no matter what. Even hearing the dad situation made me go, could it be like that's actually Bull's kid? And he just doesn't know. But it's like, no, that's not the case because they haven't not seen each other since college. So and it's been a very long time. Like the timeline doesn't match up. So I do love that the fact of the matter is the way the episode ended like that. What I also appreciated in was like, them listening to music and like Zach coming in and be like, and hearing sounds. And he's like, oh crap. Cause like the other people that were part of everything too, his other clients came through. They're like, oh, where's your mom? It's like, yeah, my mom's, yeah, she's down for the count. What about Dr. Boom? He's down too. And it's like, I was like, well, earlier in the episode, we saw them just dancing to it, but we heard a little bit. I was kind of like, maybe that's sex. Either way, that's a little awkward. That's weird. Cause I mean, it's still gotta be weird because even the conversation earlier on, like Bull's like, "Okay, you're hugging me so tight. You do know your son's standing right there." It's like I looked at his search history. He's seen a lot. He's seen a lot more than that. So I just thought that was beautifully done. It's still a little awkward because your mom is possibly having sex with her ex-boy. It's still weird, but it's like, hey, my mom's in good spirits or something like that. Because immediately when it was like, oh, let me go check on my mom, I was like, oh man, don't tell me it's something depressing like Bull's with her right now and it's like she's done. Like I thought he was gonna come in on them dancing and stuff again like before. Because I was when they were doing it initially, I was like, oh, he's gonna walk in, but he never did. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The whole like slapping butts thing too. They were just getting into it, like super good. I love it. Yeah, you know me. It was so good. But then basically alluding to them having sex at the end, so that was an interesting twist. Once again, I have to bring up the fact is, what about him and Diane? That is a Diane. I always do that, Diane or Diana. I always mess up on that. But once again, that I guess because it's not such an established thing, it's just an on and off thing. It's almost like every other episode we're trying to decide whether or not that's a thing or not. Because I also like the whole him and JP thing, which I kind of wanted the whole him and JP thing to be a thing too. But I mean, those are three awesome women we've met across the series. It's kind of like I'm fine with like. Well, I mean, his ex-wife Isabella, you know, Benny's sister is pretty cool too. So I wonder where we see her at all this season. I mean, because like it was like a one-off storyline, so maybe it'll come back in some shape or form. Maybe she needs Benny's help or something. I don't know. I'm curious to see how much from last season stuff they dealt with last season will kind of come up this season or not. But I mean, like I said, overall a great episode. I just like I say, it's bittersweet because you have to think about the fact as well. There's the whole sad, depressing aspect of it if you focus on it too much. But overall, the episode ends very positively. Everything ends very well. So I thought that was just beautifully done. So I'm also curious, does this mean we will continue the trend of getting more episodes about Bull? Like I said, I always like cases that are very personal. Like I said, these past three have been like kind of personal cases for Bull. I'm interested to see, like, you know, there's been stuff, like I said, stuff in like the first season that was personal to each one of the characters. Like I said, everyone had like their episodes last season that kind of dealt with their own personal things that were going on. So I'm curious to see, will this be a season that focuses a lot more heavily on Bull? You know, will it focus heavily on anyone in particular? Because it seemed like certain like overarching storylines like dealt very heavily with Benny last season. So especially just like, oh, that whole case last season about whether he did the right thing all those years ago, did he send the right person to jail, was, you know, all that stuff. And that basically Benny was kind of getting thrown on the bus for that. So that was a big overarching story last season. So I'm curious, is it going to be like something like that for someone else or Bull? Either way, I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.